moment to share a hello with each other. For those who are visiting, we extend a special welcome to you. It is very good to see you. We hope that you can join us in the fellowship hall following the service. However, we will not be having coffee and treats. We'll be having a light finger lunch donation luncheon. The children are working to earn money for Heifer International, so if you have time to stop by and have a little bit of lunch, and there will be a small sign-in option and leave a donation, they would greatly appreciate that. Please note also the calendar of upcoming events on the back of the bulletin. Of special note is our fellowship times next week, when we will be celebrating Dave Hobson's 90th birthday. Congratulations. So we hope that you can be here next week to celebrate in that. Please note also the special thoughts and prayers list, and please continue to keep these folks in your prayers throughout the week. And now as we begin this time of worship and celebration, let us consider these words from Rachel Carson. Those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. There is something infinitely healing in the repeated refrains of nature, the assurance that dawn comes after night and spring after winter. Will you join me now for our first hymn, which is the insert in your book. Will you join me for prayer? God of love, in those days of wonder following the first Easter Sunday, Mary and Peter heard Jesus call their names. We too draw near to hear our names spoken in love and to feel communion with your presence and with each other. As Jesus broke bread with his followers during that meal in Emmaus, and they received a blessing of recognition and joy. So we come this morning to share in the blessings of being recognized in this community of faith, and the joy of knowing we are welcome here. And Jesus spoke of peace to his disciples, showing the scars on his hands and renewing them for your work in the world. So we too come seeking peace and renewal and the courage to bear witness to your inclusive love stand now where two roads diverge. The road we have long been traveling is deceptively easy. But at its end lies disaster. Offers our last, our only chance to reach a destination. And now we want to pause and celebrate a special ministry of this church. And I'd like to invite Claudia to come forward to share a few words with you.
Like the kids, I need a stool. I welcome you all. Several have asked, what are all of the shawls at the front? This is a day, a tradition that of blessing shawls which have been donated to the church ministry, the prayer shawl ministry, by unknown people. We sort of have an idea of who does it, but they just appear. And they are provided to us and to you in any time of stress, time of grief, time of physical discomfort, surgery, and sometimes just for happy times. The prayer shawl ministry was started, and I'm sorry I couldn't find the year, but some time ago, from Charlotte Keithley and Janet Powell's ideas of putting it together. We originally just met to learn how to do it, and eventually it got to the point we were all doing it on our own. But Charlotte was behind to do it, the creativity for it. So we were here to bless the shawls, but we are also here to honor Charlotte, who passed away a year ago, because of the kind of person that she was in general, but in particular because she created the Prayer Shawl ministry, but she also created the Sew for Hope ministry, in which we make hats and pillows for the Cancer Center, for people who've lost their hair or who are going through treatment. And at Christmas time, for the Christmas tree. So all of the ornaments that are there were the idea that Charlotte had, and the talent she had in recruiting people to make ornaments for the tree. I'd like to recognize her family who are here. So Charlotte's daughter Charlotte Malloy and her family, Newton, and her daughter Megan, and her son Terry Keithley are in the middle row here, and I hope you will all welcome them after church. Thank you.
And now will you join me for our prayer shawl blessing? God of peace and comfort, we bring before you these shawls, created with love and bathed in prayer. We ask that they become a sacred place of security and well-being for those who receive them, and that the recipients feel enveloped in your love as they wrap themselves with these shawls. Recognizing that these shawls will be given to people in the difficult times of their lives, in times of physical challenge and emotional pain, we also ask that each person who receives one be reminded of the love, concern, and support of this united church. We also ask your blessing this morning on those who have given of their time and their talents, sometimes anonymously, to create these mantles of comfort. May the love they have stitched into these shawls strengthen and support their recipients. And finally, O God, we express deep gratitude for the life, love, and talent of Charlotte Keithley, who through her own life and boundless love taught us better how to meet life challenges with tenacity and grace, and how to lovingly minister to one another. For these things we pray. Amen. Since all of our children are in the fellowship hall preparing lunch, we are not going to have a children's sermon, but I invite you to join me for our next hymn, number 569. air, and healthy food, and that the diversity of life is regarded as a treasure and not simply as a resource. We ask your blessing on these gifts, that we will be able to make a difference for all. Amen. Our scripture reading today comes from the book of Romans. Those who live according to the flesh have their minds set on what the flesh desires. But those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. The mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. The mind governed by the flesh is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. Those who are in the realm of the flesh cannot please God. Will you join me for prayer and silent reflection? Creating God, on this Earth Day Sunday, we acknowledge that we have not always been the good stewards of the earth that we are called to be. We acknowledge that we have too often set ourselves above creation, assuming ourselves to be exceptional, rather than living with respect and a sense of reciprocity for all that is. Help us to understand Paul's words, that those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. Help us to seek your presence in the beauty that surrounds us, Apostle Paul's words, creation is groaning from the stresses we are putting on it. And something's got to give in a very foundational way. Shay cautioned us, the catastrophic effects of climate change are far beyond the imagination of most people. The crisis requires much more than changing light bulbs. What we need today, according to Shay, is a movement that captures so much packaging. Even with my fuel efficient car, I have to drive almost everywhere. And even when I buy energy efficient major appliances, they are still designed to fall apart after a few years. And that's not a joke. Which brings us back to Shay's point. It's bigger than all of us doing our individual parts. Episcopal priest Reagan Sutterfield writes, to borrow a concept from family therapy, the climate crisis is the identified patient of our planetary dysfunction. And the identified patient is the sign of a larger problem. A wider network of extremely individual habits, but also our culture. We have to shift our culture from one that rapidly consumes and discards to one that truly weighs the impact of our action on the whole of creation. And we have to find a way to do it without fossil fuels. It will not be easy. It will likely be incredibly difficult and discouraging. And giving up and scrolling on our phones is going to be incredibly tempting. Which is why taking that walk is still important. Immersing ourselves in nature reminds us not only of what's at stake, but also recalls us to our place in the whole of creation. Catherine Preston of Sojourners magazine writes, "The most miraculous part of Earth's agency is not how she makes mountains rise and streams carve, or how she responds to carbon overload through heat waves and vortexes. It's how she offers humans an invitation to intimacy, to experience her with awe, humility, gratitude, and joy, inviting response from all of our senses, our hearts and souls, and not just our minds." That's quite a bit more than a dollar. So here's my hope for today. As we celebrate Earth Day tomorrow, and each tomorrow after that, may the ever behold the crimson sunset. May my hands treat with respect the things which thou hast created, and may my ears hear thy voice.